So about a year ago I saw renders of the Nakon MG-X on the Microsoft website. They also had renders of the MG-X Pro. That was the one I was actually looking forward to, but the Pro version hadn't yet been released, so I thought I'd test this one out instead. Now, don't be fooled by the intro, this video isn't sponsored. I did of course pay 80 quid at Argos from my own pocket to get this controller. I've also since then noticed that it can be purchased for £55 now on Amazon, but there's still no shying away from the fact that it's still expensive. But is it worth the money you're being asked to pay for it? To find out the answer to that question and more, keep watching. Here's the box for the Nakon MG-X controller. It doesn't look like a third-party accessory at all. You'd be forgiven for thinking this is an actual product from Microsoft itself. It's of course only compatible with Android phones, so iPhone users will have to look elsewhere. The controller has been certified designed for Xbox. As far as I'm aware, at the time of testing, it's one of the only controllers available to achieve this certification, which means I have very high expectations for this controller, within reason that is. So let's get this box open. You get a USB-A to USB-C cable. Next we have something with their website URL, regulatory compliance information that no one really cares about, a warranty insert, safety instructions, contact information for various jurisdictions, and a quick start guide, which you don't really need because I'll show you how to set this controller up a little later. Finally, we have the Nakon MG-X itself. Firstly, the MG-X looks very stylish. Straight out of the box you can tell it definitely feels and looks like a premium piece of kit. It's primarily designed with Xbox Game Pass gaming in mind, so the layout, like the asymmetrical analog sticks and coloured action buttons, do mirror what you would see on an Xbox controller. You've got Nacon branding right here, as well as textured soft rubber. You've also got rubber padding on the inner side so your phone doesn't scratch or get damaged. There's a little protruding bit of plastic at the bottom here. There's no rubber on that, which is odd, but it should stop your phone from sliding out. Around the back we have raised grips as well as textured rubber, which feels really nice to the touch. You've also got the Nakon logo right there on the back. Turning the controller back around, you can see this is of course a spring-loaded telescopic controller. Extending and releasing it, it does snap back quite violently, so do be careful with your fingers or whatever appendage you might have next to it. The ergonomics of the controller is really good. It fits well in the hands and feels really comfortable to hold, but I'll have to see how it feels during extended periods of gaming. The good thing is it doesn't weigh much at just 205 grams, so that should definitely help. The controller isn't too big either. It measures in at 185 by 94 by 35 millimeters. To give you an idea of how big that is, here are some other gamepads I've reviewed in the past. You can see the MG-X is slightly bigger than one of my favorites, the GameSir X2, which stopped working for whatever reason. Anyways, the MG-X is smaller than the GLAC Play, so in terms of size it sort of fits in between these two controllers. Now back to the MG-X. Around the top we have shoulder buttons, RB, LB, RT and LT. RT and LT are both analog, so they are pressure sensitive, but I have to admit these feel very odd. It's almost as if there's something mushy stuffed inside. It's hard to tell if you've actually activated the button or not, as it's not tactile or clicky. Now even with that said, these trigger buttons are very sensitive. On other gamepads I can rest my fingers on the triggers, but on the MG-X it's difficult doing that. For instance, on some shooters it's so sensitive I keep firing my weapon unintentionally, so I have to keep my fingers off the triggers. You'll probably get used to it though, as long as you keep fingering and building those finger muscles up. And whilst we're on the subject of muscle building, I've got to say, even though these triggers work really well in racing games, I mean you can control the exact amount of gas or acceleration you want to apply, the triggers almost feel like foot pedals in a car. There's a lot of resistance as you push them down. For instance, on Forza Horizon 5, holding RT all the way down for an extensive period felt really uncomfortable, but at least your fingers will be buff at the end of it. Anyways, let's get back to the rest of the controller. We've got asymmetrical analog sticks. You can of course push down LS and RS. Here we have a full-size D-pad with a pivot point in the middle. The edges of the D-pad don't feel very smooth, so you could get blisters on your thumb during a prolonged bout on a beat 'em up. It didn't happen to me, so that's good, but in general the D-pad is otherwise very good, and I didn't have any difficulty in pulling off special moves. That should be music to the ears for all the Hadouken halls out there who like to spam out projectile-like attacks all day long. Next we have the view button here on the left next to the left stick, menu button, the Nexus button, 4 coloured Xbox style action buttons, so you've got X, Y, A and B. I've seen some reviews where they mention that it's impossible to press A, B, X, Y with your thumb without accidentally moving the right stick. Whilst that might have genuinely been the experience, it has never happened to me with this controller, so I don't think it's something anyone should really worry about. Next to the right stick is a battery LED, and below that a player indication LED. Around the bottom left you have a USB-C charging port, to the right you will find the Bluetooth sync button. All the buttons are clicky, tactile and very good to use except for the mushy triggers that I talked about earlier. I used to think the ones on the Glap were bad, but those were just oddly placed. They were otherwise really good. How did Nacon fail on such an important part of the controller? It's beyond my understanding. I just hope the MG-X Pro is better in that regard. Anyways, let's get this controller set up. Make sure Bluetooth is turned on your phone. I'm not going to show you how to do that because everyone knows how to do that. Press the Nexus button on the controller. The player indication LED should start flashing steadily. Now press and hold the Bluetooth button on the lower right hand side for 3 seconds to start appearing. The player indicator LED should now start to flash rapidly. On your phone, under available devices, the controller should appear under the name Nakon MG-X. Tap on that and accept the Bluetooth pairing request. Now wait until the controller is in the list of paired devices. You can see that is indeed the case here, and that's it. The controller is connected in X input mode, which also means you can navigate around the Android operating system with the controller. Not only is that convenient, it also means less smudges on your screen. As mentioned earlier, this is a telescopic controller and Nacon claims it will fit most phones with a display up to 6.7 inches, or to be more precise, any phone with a max height of 163mm. My Sony Xperia 1 is taller than that with a height of 167mm. It still fits perfectly, and I suspect you can probably go a little larger than that. Another thing you'll notice with a phone like the Xperia 1 with its width of 72mm, it leaves a fair bit of the controller exposed around the back. It's not a great look, but when I pop my Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 3 in, it does cover the back up. It looks really good with the Fold 3. It's almost as if it was just made for it. The controller grips and holds onto the phone very firmly, so no need to worry that it will slip out. You can confidently use it with your Fold. Although I've not tested a controller with any phone with a case on, it should work with most slim cases. As I've already mentioned, this controller is designed primarily for Xbox Game Pass, and in my experience it works perfectly with that service. Here you can see me playing Halo Infinity. The controller works exceptionally. All the buttons match up to everything on the app, so it should be really easy to just jump into with a very small learning curve, if any. There's plenty of games to choose from in the Game Pass library, but this controller isn't just limited to that particular service. As you can see, it works perfectly with Stadia. Remember the sensitive triggers I was talking about earlier? Well, that problem doesn't apply to all FPS games. For instance, on Destiny 2, you need to push the trigger button down a fair bit for it to actually activate. I actually prefer it this way, but obviously bear in mind it'll depend on the game you're playing. The MG-X also works with other game streaming services like Geforce Now and Steam Link. I also tried it with PS Remote Play. It didn't work with that, but you can use the controller with PS Play for your PS4 or PS5. So now that we've established this controller works with nearly every game streaming service I've thrown at it, what about Android games from the Play Store? Well, as long as the game has native gamepad support, it will work perfectly. Asphalt 9 is one of those games. It's probably not the best example, but the game does work with the controller. Another example is Grand Mountain Adventure. It's a very fun snowboarding game. You guys should definitely give it a try. The MG-X will also work with lots of different emulators. Here's Super Mario World running on Pizza Boy GBA. Mega Man Maverick Hunter X on PPSSPP. Castlevania Dawn of Sorrow on DraStic. Not all games will support game controllers. It's not a given that it will just work, so do bear that in mind. For instance, Call of Duty Mobile works with certain game controllers out of the box, but on the MG-X it just won't, for whatever reason. Fortunately, as long as the game supports touch controls, you can use button mapping apps like Mantis Gamepad Pro to map the on-screen buttons to a physical button on the controller. Mantis works really well because you can activate it without PC or a second device. It's very convenient. Shout out to Android Addicts for making me aware of Mantis. It's a great channel, so go check him out. I'll place the link to his video on the Mantis Gamepad Pro in the description below. You'll find instructions on how to set up Mantis on there. This is probably the best time to segue into talking about the analog sticks. As you can see from my testing of the sticks, my super scientific test of trying to draw out a spiral in the axis test suggests it's one of the best, most precise and accurate sticks I've ever used. No lies. It's got no dead zone whatsoever. There's no bias towards any of the 4 directions. I'm actually super surprised, but as with most good things, it's a bit of a double-edged sword. With that precision comes extra sensitivity. These sticks are very sensitive. It means you'll need some time to get used to it, but I rather have sensitive sticks than ones with dead zones. At least that's my take on the matter. Hopefully by this point of the review you've already realized this is a Bluetooth controller. If I haven't mentioned it already, I'm sure I have, but to be specific, the MG-X supports Bluetooth 4.2 plus BLE, and from my experience the connection has been super stable. It goes without saying that Bluetooth introduces some latency, and for that reason some people will avoid Bluetooth controllers like the plague, but I've not encountered any noticeable lag between pressing a button and the actuation of a command. It seems pretty good to me, even with game streaming services. I was able to connect to the PC using Bluetooth. I tested it with Steam on PC, and unlike some other controllers I've tested, it didn't work with Steam out of the box. I did have to map the buttons in game, but once I did, it worked perfectly. Another thing to note, although you can see me playing Burnout here over a Bluetooth connection, it's also possible to connect directly to the PC via a USB-C to USB-A cable. Obviously that method will reduce latency, but it also means the controller is charging while you're playing and you don't have to worry about the battery. And on that note, battery life is stated to be 20 hours, and I can definitely say that's accurate. If the battery does die on you, fortunately you can charge it with the supplied USB-C cable fairly easily. Do bear in mind that it doesn't come with a power plug, but most people already have one of those. I just used the one that came with my Samsung phone and it works, so no concerns there. So what's my final take on the Nakon MG-X? I think it's an excellent controller. Now I'm not ignoring the triggers, yes those are pretty bad. The mushy feeling and the high sensitivity is definitely something to consider before buying this, but if you can look past that, especially because you'll eventually get used to the triggers like I did, everything else on the MG-X screams quality. It's comfortable to hold even during extended periods of gaming, and I would have to disagree with anyone that says otherwise. The MG-X looks stunning. It works with third-party button mapping applications. The analog sticks are really good. When I initially purchased the controller, I did think it was a bit expensive, but the price has come down a fair bit since then. As it currently stands, I definitely recommend this controller to anyone. If you're interested, I've placed links to the product page in the description below. This has been Raju Rahman from Tectonic. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video and it helped you, please subscribe and like. That would really help me out. And don't forget to check out these other videos too.